You open the fridge, there's nothing there. So what's it gonna be? Greasy pizza? Sad drive-thru burgers? Dish by Blue Apron is for nights like that. These are the pre-made meals of your dreams. At least 20 grams of protein, no artificial flavors or colors, no chopping, no cleanup, no guilt. Keep the flavor. Ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Hello everyone and welcome to How Are the Podcast. It's Gav and you join us for a little update on the news, a little chinwag. I don't know what to call this one. It's just a bit crack between a bunch of lads. We're here to chat about Sunderland as we are every single day on How Are the Podcast. And joining me, first of all, I've got Bomber with us who, again, I said this to Andrew last week and Andrew said to me, we see each other more than we see our own mothers at the minute. And it's getting a bit like that with you and me, innit? How are we doing?
I think this is probably 3 in a row, mate. 3 days in a row that I've seen your face. So yeah. I'm good, mate. Yeah, good. Excited to have another chat about our favourite subject.
That's it. And our guest today is Scott Wilson of the Northern Echo, who hasn't been on since the playoffs. And Scott, when you were on around that time, we just didn't know what was going to happen. I imagine for you, it's been a mad summer so far.
It's been absolutely bonkers. I think I said on one of our pods that of all the tick lists of things that could happen in Sunderland, Fabrizio Romano effectively becoming Sunderland's press officer didn't go top of my list when I was watching them at Fleetwood and Accrington and Morecambe and God knows where. But yeah, incredible. I mean, it's so exciting as to what this season might bring. I mean, I think we're all massively excited. It still feels like a bit of a step into the unknown. I know we're starting to see them in kind of friendly action and getting a bit idea of what the team looks like. But, it feels like a season where literally anything could happen, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, you mentioned it there, so I'll go back to it. But when you were watching Sunderland at Fleetwood and Accrington and places like that, I mean, sliding doors, we talked about this on the pod the other day, sliding doors moments, that Tommy Watson goal.
Yeah.
I mean, the difference between us targeting players like Granit Xhaka, and we'll come on to all of this, but targeting players of that ability versus, I looked the other day in Sheffield United are signing like Bulgarian third division players and they've just signed Louis Barry. I mean, it is, the difference is colossal, isn't it?
Oh, it's unbelievable. And I mean, I think, when we were all watching them at that level, I think we all felt that Sunderland would get back, that wasn't going to be Sunderland's level, that things would turn. Now, obviously, took a fair while in League One, didn't it? Far longer than any of us wanted or thought. But I think really from the point that Sunderland won promotion from League One, actually, the journey to where they've got now, while there was that real kind of lull period under Beale and then Dodds, but really it's been pretty rapid progress from there. It's from kind of taking forever to get out of League One. It feels like actually the transformation, and now, I mean, obviously this summer is absolutely supercharged it. There's no doubt about that. But even the kind of gradual transition in the Championship was actually probably faster than perhaps many thought it might be.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot, Bomber. You kind of got to pinch yourself, haven't you? But you don't even think in your wildest dreams you could have expected to have the summer we've had so far. I think when we were like kind of trying to contemplate what was going to happen next after getting promoted, which just felt so weird, I don't think we expected to have spent as much as we have, and that's why when we're doing these pods every day together, it's kind of like, we're talking about Granit Xhaka and we're talking about players like that, and you just can't get your head around it still. It still feels very weird.
It feels like real life football managers, doesn't it? Like you start off your save game with Sunderland in the Championship, and then you find a few wonder kids, spend a few million, and then all of a sudden you're competing for the Champions League. Now, I'll cover that, but that's not where I think what we're doing next season. But just the exponential rise, like Scott mentioned, like we spent a long time in League One, and then when we finally got out of League One, there was obviously that relief. But I don't think anybody really thought that we'd be geared up for a playoff push in our first Championship season, and we did. And all right, the Luton game was a step too far. It kind of bullied us a little bit, and then we went the complete opposite way and went down to 16th, and then all of a sudden we're 12 months later, we're talking about being a Premier League team. And you're right, just that acceleration has gone beyond my wildest dreams. I was expecting, probably 6 or 7 seasons in the Championship to be in a position where we can really challenge to be promoted into the Premier League. And it's happened a lot sooner. And yeah, it's just a whirlwind at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah. It's probably a good thing for you, Scott, Sunderland. I've been so busy because it's not like much is going on elsewhere, really, is it? You know what I mean? In the Northeast, it just seems to be all us this summer.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. It's just and it's like we were saying kind of before we started this. It's almost like every day, every morning. It's like, right, okay, where are we actually at with these signings? Who's on, and then a new name kind of comes from nowhere. I mean, it's settling down a little bit now because obviously, a big chunk of the business has been done, which is a massive tick in the box, regardless, to get it done so early. And I'm sure we'll get to kind of, the excitement of some of the players that have come through the door. But it still feels like, speaking to Register Briss and kind of hearing things in and around the club, that, there's still the desire to do a reasonable bit more. I think, I don't think we're just talking about another player here or another player there. I think we're talking about still a fair few through the door before the season starts. And to be fair, with the injury kind of situation, especially at the back, that's kind of still needed, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if come the end of August, beginning of September, we've signed a new player in every single position on the pitch. So we end up with 10, 11 new players, because we're still talking about possibly bringing a goalkeeper in, bringing another striker in to support Mayenda and Isidore. We're talking about centre backs and then maybe another left back or right back. I wouldn't be surprised to see us be able to field an 11 of complete new signings.
Yeah, what does a typical summer look like for you then, Scott, as a journalist covering 3 clubs? Because there's a period of downtime for the football clubs, certainly on the pitch. The players all shoot off all over the place. But we've talked about this quite a bit because we do a new podcast every day. There's just so much to talk about. If there wasn't, we wouldn't do this. It's been really busy this summer. But is this a typical summer? Would you say, or would you say it's a bit of a difference?
It's changed quite a lot. So I've been at the Echo now for the best part of 2 decades. And when I first went in, it really was a case that the summer I did a bit of cricket, might have done a bit of Olympicsy stuff, did a bit of other stuff, you know what I mean? And kind of picked the football up once pre-season started. Now it's just completely different. And partly that's obviously the way that news media has gone with kind of everything being immediate now. But I think it's also just the fact that the whole kind of world of transfers and everything, whether you like it or not, has become a massive part of football and a massive part of football conversation. We've all seen that. So people always say to you as a kind of football journalist, well, what do you do in the summer? Well, it really does this time never stop. It never stops. And that's great because you're not scratching around. But, probably the one thing it does mean is, whereas in the past, other sports would have got a little bit more breathing space, that just doesn't happen anymore. It's kind of an all-consuming beast. Now we cover all the pre-season stuff, but we don't do the trips. So obviously Phil from the Sunderland Echo was out in Portugal. That's largely because we do cover Sunderland, Borough and Newcastle. So if we do one, we've got to do 3. And clearly with a pretty small team now, that has big implications. So while I would have liked to have been sipping Superbock with Phil on the Algarve, that didn't happen. But I am going to Hearts on Saturday.
Oh God, you're spoiled.
I am going to Hull on Tuesday, so I'll be rubbing it in with him. Don't you worry. He'll be sat there with his suntan. I'll let him know.
It's going to be a nice day in Edinburgh on Saturday. Sun will be shining.
Real, no, I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, I am. Yeah. That'll be good. That'll be really good. I suspect it'll be more enjoyable than Hull on a Tuesday night.
I'm missing the one on Saturday and going on Tuesday, so I think I'm
got the wrong way round, Gav.
I know. Well, I'm going to see Oasis at Wembley on Saturday, so
that is a good
fair compromise.
Yeah, that's
fair compromise. We briefly touched on it there, sort of, the way that the summer's played out and the fact that you cover 3 clubs. And I was, you've been doing this, like, say, the best part of 2 decades. So I was just wondering, because you'll have seen a lot of promotions in that time. Sunderland have been promoted, once from League One, 20 years, so 2 championship promotions.
Yeah.
Borough, I can't remember how many, but they've had a few, haven't they? And then the Mags have had two promotions out of the championship too. So I know that there's a lot of time between those periods, and football's changed so much. But how does this summer, do you think, compare to what you've seen before from promoted teams in the North East? Because to us as Sunderland fans, this feels like nothing I've ever seen. I know we've become used to not spending so much since we dropped into League One and etc. But even now, 20, 25 million, 30 million for players, I'm like scratching myself wondering, Jesus, well, you know what? The game's changed so much over that time, hasn't it?
Yeah, massively. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily so much the number of players that have come in, because I think in previous promotions, there has been a pretty major overhaul of the team. Clearly, the difference this time round is the sums that are being spent, and that's obviously just reflective of the amount of money that's washing around the Premier League now and what promotion meant to Sunderland in terms of the finances and the profiles of the players. It's undoubted that 10 years ago, if Sunderland had signed a young lad from the Belgian top flight, then our knowledge, your knowledge, and anyone's knowledge of that player, unless you were a real kind of European football nut, would have been pretty minimal. Whereas now,
Peter Reid used to...
we've either already heard of, or we can very, very quickly get up to speed with, watch everything they've done in the last 2 seasons, speak to people who've seen them every week. And so I think that's the difference, the olden days of a name cropping up on CFAX or whatever, and you're thinking, bloody hell, who on earth is that? Well, that's the difference now, isn't it? We kind of, if we don't already know these players, we can find out an awful lot about them very quickly.
Yeah, well, Peter Reid used to have those books stacked up by his desk. Remember Premier Passions? Where he just rip one off the shelf and flick through it and look at his book of players. Like, that was the extent of European scouting back in the day. And you're right, I think it's just because there's so much of this stuff at our fingertips. It's like, it doesn't matter who they are, Bomber, does it? There could be, like I mentioned before, Sheffield United signing these random Bulgarian players, which they've clearly never scouted before. They've just used data metrics to pick them out of nowhere. But it's that easy. You can just jump on YouTube and search the name of whoever you've been linked with and find an 8-minute compilation video right there that some geeks made. Like, like, someone's done all the hard work for the scouts. It is that easy these days.
I mean, from a fan's point of view, it's fantastic because you as soon you jump onto the excitement of that new signing, regardless of whether you heard of them or not, and regardless of how much they've cost. Like you said, you can go and access them straight away. Now, there is a flip side of that because we all make our minds up that they're the second coming of Lionel Messi every single time, because nobody really puts a YouTube compilation of a player being absolutely naff. So every new signing automatically becomes the next wonder kid to come through the system. But if you can look at it a bit more objectively, it's just not. I think what it does is, for me anyway, I can speak for myself, is it builds the excitement a little bit more of being able to see these players. So just watching a few clips of all the new signings, Siddiqui, Diarra, all of them, and they're hand-picked clips that make them look fantastic. But for the 45 minutes or 90 minutes that we've seen of them so far, it kind of matches up. So it just made me more excited for that first game against West Ham. I was on there at 9 o'clock, ready to get me ticket, managed to get me ticket, flying up to Newcastle and back in the day. And because of the access that you get, I'm so excited to see these players. And I'm going to keep a level head and not profess that they're all the second coming of N'Golo Kante and Lionel Messi and the likes. But that's fully what I expect on the 16th of August.
It is a good point, that though, Scott, that when you think about even 15 years ago, you couldn't have watched every single pre-season game on the club website.
Oh.
You would have had to go to the games. I can remember when we played that tournament in Hong Kong when Di Canio was manager, and it was the first time I think I'd really seen Sunderland play pre-season games. I remember us playing Atletico Madrid when Keane was manager in the Amsterdam Stadium, and that I remember that, but it was like sporadic. You weren't used to it, Whereas now every single game, I mean, even for you as somebody who covers these clubs, it means you don't have to make them trips. You can watch the game. You can have your bits ready for the morning for the newspaper and the website straight after full time. I mean, whilst the coverage of the football clubs have changed over the years, there are aspects which are, I presume, better. You've got that level of access that wasn't there for people who did your job even 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's opened everything right up, hasn't it? Like you said, and pre-season's just become a completely different beast in that respect as well.
Yeah.
I mean, pre-season back in the day, you cemented a trip to Rotherham, maybe a 2-game trip to like Kilmarnock and Motherwell or something, or maybe down to Cornwall to play Plymouth and Exeter. That was the tour, and then maybe you'd finish with a home game against somebody.
Was that when Warnock was manager? At
Warnock and Borough, yeah.
That was his favourite, wasn't it?
Yeah. And everyone round the house for a barbecue there. And obviously Roy Keane and that era, a couple of games in Ireland, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was the get the lads over there for a trip. So, as a kind of just the way that pre-season operates has completely changed. But you're right, certainly from a fan point of view, you can pretty much, you can't you? You can watch anything and everything now. So, as Bomber was saying, it does build the excitement, and it means that you're going into the season thinking, okay, well, I've seen a little bit of him. He looks like he's best there, and it's opened it right up. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, it really has, and I love it though, Bomber. It's great for us because we get to watch. Like we just talked about what Scott does, but for us, we can sit and talk about these games together, and we don't have to have made the trips. It makes you feel like, a bit lazy, but at the same time, it is nice. Like just being able to chuck the stream on and watch the game and see what's going on.
Yeah, it is nice because, like you said beforehand, when you didn't have the television coverage of it, you were relying on texting one of your mates who might have made it over there, or hearing from the uncle of a cousin of a friend who might have made it over to Albufeira to watch a game, and then you're hearing kind of second and third hand information. But now you can see it for yourself, and again, just to reiterate, it just builds that excitement, particularly the first half of the Sporting Lisbon game. I was watching that and I was thinking, can't wait to see these guys line up against West Ham. Can't wait to see them in the Premier League. So yeah, it really does build that excitement, and it means that for us as fans as well, we get to talk about and be involved in the thing that we love 365 days a year, pretty much. Because it used to be season finished at the end of May, and then you wondered what the hell you were going to do with your life up until the 1st of July. And then all of a sudden pre-season kicks in and you can start building it back up. But now it's a 365 day a year thing, which is what I'm all for.
Yeah, and I actually, this reminds me a lot of a season a while ago, the 2009-10 season when Steve Bruce came in, because as I've just mentioned, we played 2 games in Amsterdam, and they were televised, and we played a game against Celtic, which was televised.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that we got to see some of these new players, because Bruce went out that summer and not exactly the same as what we've done now, but he spent a lot of money. He went and got Darren Bent, Lorik Sarna, he got Catamol, and et cetera, et cetera. And we got to see these players before the season started. And then I remember going to Bolton away, first game of the season, and everyone was buzzing to see this team play. Yeah. And it was like watching as far as we were concerned, it was like watching the Harlem Globetrotters, It was like Sunderland have went and spent a lot of money. He has this new super team that we've put together. In reality, it wasn't a super team. It was, we had Darren Bent and Catamol and Sana and the likes, but we had a new look team. And I actually think that pre-season, Scott, it really did build into the excitement for what started. And I think that'll be the case this time around with this team, because there are so many new players at Sunderland. We've already got 6 now. We still haven't seen Mandava play, so he's another one we haven't seen yet. And obviously, the rest of them have had a handful of 45 minutes here and there. So there's still time to build up that excitement. Then we're going to bring even more players in. And by the time we play West Ham, providing we don't get tonked in every game between now and the end of pre-season, which I can't really see happening, I can't see the sort of momentum Sunderland have got stopping. And I think by the time we get to West Ham, there's going to be a really good feeling about the place going into the start of the season.
Oh, yeah, it'll be a hell of an atmosphere for that first game. I mean, it was always going to be, I think, wasn't it? First game back. I think everyone was pretty chuffed, I think, when the first game came out at home, because it felt like that was the real way to start it, wasn't it? You know what I mean? So, but you're right. The way that the summer has built and is continuing to build, I think, just accentuates that ahead of that first game. And it's going to be just a hell of an occasion and fascinating to see how the team does. And then B, it's going to be interesting to see what that first team looks like, isn't it? All of these players are coming in, but what does that mean for Chris Rigg? What does that mean for Dan Neil? What does that mean for Trey Hume? What does that mean for Wilson Isidore, Patrick Roberts? How much football if Lebris has his full choice squad available, are those players going to play? And I think that's going to be a fascinating dynamic in the first kind of quarter of the season, because there will be some of the younger lads that will need a bit more time than others. But I think, as Bomber was alluding to, there's some that you've already seen, Diarra and Siddiqui being the obvious two, who look pretty much oven ready, don't they? You'd be pretty confident that they'll hit the ground running day one. So what that first team looks like, I think, will be fascinating.
Yeah, it is going to be, exciting to see, Bomber. And you've just said there, you've got your ticket, you've got your flights booked. I'm the same. I've got my season ticket, renew every year, obviously, but I'm going to be there. I can't wait. And it's just nice, isn't it? It's a good way to start the season. I think there was a little bit of a worry in my mind that after having experienced such a big high in that playoff final, in the run up to the playoff final, the semis too, that there would be a lull, but there hasn't.
No.
I think the football club have done a brilliant job of continuing that momentum. They've basically thought about it and went, how do we keep this going? Like, we can't have a lull. We need to capitalise on the good feeling. And it's just been, getting the squad in shape early. It's been communicating the right things out to the fan base through the media and all that other stuff. I do think they deserve a lot of credit for the way they've carried that on.
Yeah, 100%. They've done everything they can to keep that good feeling going, and they've done they've done a really, really good job at it. Like for me, again, speaking for myself, this doesn't feel necessarily like a new season. It feels like a continuation of the end of last season.
Yeah.
And I'll be going, I say, to that West Ham game, still high off of Wembley and still high off of that late Dan Ballard winner at Coventry. So yeah, there hasn't been that break, and pre-season has started in such a way that, like you said, that momentum has carried on as well. If we'd have gone to Sporting Lisbon and took a paste in with a load of new signings, might have dampened it a little bit. But yeah, it's just, like I say, felt like a continuation of Wembley, and 16th of August is going to be a party regardless. Before kickoff, before 3:00, it's going to be an absolute wild party. There's going to be all that relief and the realisation and the reality that, yes, we genuinely are back in the Premier League. And there's going to be the expectation for the new players. And like I said, I wanted to make sure I was at that first game of the season, because I don't get to go to many games. I'm a 4-hour drive each way away. So home games can be difficult for me, but I thought if there's one game I want to make sure I get to this season, it's that West Ham game, because regardless of what happens this season, other than the Mags game, the atmosphere isn't going to be topped this season, I don't think, other than that first game.
Yeah, we've touched on it a few times already, Scott, but just to zone in on it a little bit more, transfers and stuff. Obviously, at the minute, you'll be covering the Xhaka story, which, as we speak, we don't know where that's going, so we won't go into the sort of the nuances of it. And also over the other side of the water, you've got the Alexander Isaac story, which, I mean, even today there's been news that he's not in the travelling squad for the pre-season tour and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on the transfer deals playing out in public? Because like the Xhaka one, for instance, you're getting something from Eric Ten Hag, you're getting something from his agent, you're getting the sporting director's input. With Isaac, all the news from the continent is like he wants to go, he wants more money. Liverpool want him, the team in Saudi Arabia want him, but then Eddie Howe comes out and is playing it down, and it's like, who does it benefit ultimately that this stuff gets played out in public?
I think that's just a reflection of the level that Sunderland have now got themselves to.
Yeah.
The reality is, so we also cover Borough. Not an awful lot gets out about Borough. We learn, there's little bits, but Borough will make some transfers this summer where pretty much the first you hear about it is somebody's at the training ground, which was back in the day, was exactly what it was with Sunderland, really. Now, once you're in that Premier League environment, and it even, to be fair, it seems to be even more kind of open and public on the continent. The continental style of doing it does seem to be that agents and club executives just regularly speak pretty openly to the media in a way that we're still not quite at in this country yet. So I think deals overseas straight away just seem to get out very quickly and very easily. And I just think, like I say, the level and the profile that Sunderland are at now, it's pretty much impossible for them to keep once it gets to a certain point and you're actually speaking to players and clubs, you're not going to be able to keep that quiet. And to be fair to Sunderland, I think they've embraced that this summer. I think in the past, there almost has been a kind of circling of the wagons, and we'll try and keep it in-house as much as we can. And it's felt some of the time like we as the media were almost having to fight against that. And I think the club would acknowledge that. I think this summer they've kind of had to accept that actually that world's gone now. There's absolutely no point in them fighting a battle that they're just not going to be able to win. So they've almost gone the other way and completely embraced it and just said, right, whatever's out there, we'll roll with it. And then when we're ready to say something or ready to brief, we will. So in some ways, it's been quite refreshing with that, really. But it does just mean that it's been a bit of a milestone.
Yeah. Well, it's right what Scott says there, Bomber. You know, when we were in the Championship in League One, especially under this administration, because they've been pretty good at keeping the deals close to their chest. And normally the leaks would always happen on the players' side in whatever country they were playing in. And, you know, you think about Middlesbrough now, it's probably right. It's probably a bit like what we've had in the last couple of years where, you know, Fabrizio Romano doesn't really care about what Sunderland are doing in the Championship, does he? Let's be honest. And even to another extent, you know, even Keith Downey said himself at Sky, you know, when Sunderland were in the Championship, he was sent to report on Newcastle. He wasn't really sent that often to report on Sunderland. And it's just the way the world when you're a Premier League football club.
I'm sure it makes Scott's job a damn sight easier when the club and the press officers at the club are working with him rather than trying to keep things from him. But for us as fans, it just helps build that excitement. And there's obviously been a strategic decision at the club to work with the press and with journalists rather than, like you said, be a bit wary of them. Because like Scott said, these things do come out now. There's so much, you know, when you've got other fanzines and outlets breaking Jermaine Defoe's signing. And now we're in a place where we've got Fabrizio Romano and his millions of followers seeing him talk up Sunderland deals. It's a world away, and it wasn't actually that long ago if you think about it. So yeah, I'm all for it. Like I said, it helps build fan engagement, it helps build fan excitement, and I'm glad that the club have kind of made that realization and changed their direction, their attitude towards press.
Yeah, it is interesting, Scott. You know, when you see Fabrizio Romano in particular tweeting out big Sunderland stories, it might sound silly, this, but it does all add to that feeling of like Sunderland are a big deal because everybody sees what he tweets and everybody sees his transfer stuff, and then people are talking about Sunderland, and you'll have seen it like I have. Everybody's talking about us at the minute. Everyone's going, bloody hell, Sunderland making a big go of it, and that, to be honest, that does have a lot to do with who gets the big scoops on them stories. And
I suspect that has been as well part of the club's thinking of, we just need to throw ourselves in with this, because you're absolutely right. You know, the profile of Sunderland was always going to be transformed simply by winning promotion and getting up there. But I think that, you know, you compare the way that Sunderland are being kind of talked about and viewed and considered to Burnley so far this summer. Yeah. And it feels poles apart. Now, you know, I think we'll all sit here and say, well, Sunderland are a bigger club than Burnley. Okay, fine. But the reality is they're both clubs that have just been promoted to the Premier League. Burnley have actually been in the Premier League, you know, more than Sunderland have in the last decade. So, and yet it feels absolutely poles apart. Now, partly that's because Sunderland have been doing more business and certainly sexier business. Yeah, I get that. But just from being in that world and being at the heart of that world for big chunks of the summer, I think Sunderland's profile, you know, it just feels radically different to a club like Burnley's, who really fundamentally are in the same position.
Well, and you just look at how it influences things like the betting markets. Like, so I think isn't the biggest bet in the UK currently Sunderland to finish in the top 10?
Top 10, yeah.
And now all of a sudden Burnley are slight favourites to finish bottom of the league. And it just, let's say, it's amazing the transformation in public opinion. I think for me, I'm not used to not discussing Sunderland to people who aren't Sunderland fans, and now all of a sudden I've got friends and family members who, you know, support Liverpool's and Tottenham's and Man United's, etc., who are coming to me to go, bloody hell, if you sign Granit Xhaka, that's
I can't believe you get Granit Xhaka.
Yeah, it's a very surreal feeling.
Just interested in that phrase you used there, Scott, sexier signings. I don't know, is Granit Xhaka a sexier signing than giving Ashley Barnes a new 1-year deal, do you think? No, but
Yeah.
in all seriousness though, that particular one is rumbling on, and I kind of do still have that feeling of, I'll believe it when I see it type of thing. But Sunderland are being linked with a player who's a genuine, top class player, and that strategy from the club has been set pretty early. It's like we're not just trying to stay up here. We want to sign players who are going to keep us in the Premier League for a long time.
So on Xhaka, like you said, this might change straight away. I felt at the weekend that Sunderland were going to be getting Xhaka. I thought all the noises were suggesting that. I think Ten Hag putting his flag in the sand has created a big issue there, because Leverkusen have kind of offloaded so much already this summer that I think Ten Hag's almost saying to the board.
I think they're losing another one as well, aren't they? They're losing the goalkeeper as well.
Yeah, this has to end somewhere. So my soundings, or from what I'm hearing, that has made it an awful lot more difficult. Now, that's not to say there's not a way through it for Sunderland. Let's see. Regardless of that, like you say, the fact that they've been willing to make such a big push for a player like Xhaka. So a group of us sat down, as you probably know, with Christian Speakman at the end of the season, well, kind of start of pre-season really, and had a bit of a chat about what might happen and what might not happen. And he kind of said, look, we think the way that we've been doing things works. That's the fundamental track that we want to stay down. And most of Sunderland's signings have kind of been broadly in line with what we know the club are trying to do. But he did say, there is an acknowledgement that what you need in the Premier League is different, certainly different to what you needed in League One, and quite radically different to what you needed in the Championship. So there will be areas where we need to tweak it, was I think his words. And so we took that as meaning, there might be an odd more experienced face. And to be fair to Speakman, as he quite, regularly tries to stress to us, it's not like Sunderland have never signed experienced players. Chris Metham clearly played a really, really big part in everything that happened last season. Alan Brown, not so much, although he did have his moments, but was another deal that Sunderland were willing to make that didn't really fit the mould. So, Ronaldo was obviously the first one, but Xhaka clearly is a very, very different type of signing. But I think we can all understand why Sunderland would be willing to make it and what they see Xhaka offering, because, we all know what he was at Arsenal, but, it's not like he's left Arsenal and been swanning around in, dare I say it, Saudi Arabia or whatever for 2 or 3 seasons. He's been playing for the best team in the Bundesliga for one season and very nearly the best team in the Bundesliga for another season. So, he'd have so much that he could offer, and I think it would be a massive signing if Sunderland could get it over the line. I think they're going to have to really kick and fight to do it, probably.
I don't know about you as well, Scott, but for me, when I see, because we're not going to get every player we go for, right? At the end of the day, as much as I think Sunderland are the greatest football team in the world, not every player in the world thinks that, and there's going to be options for good players, right? So, you've seen it already this summer. The goalkeeper from France, was it Marcin Bulka? He had options, and he took a deal in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And there's players like that there. There's other names we've been linked with. I think again that it's come back up the last couple of days. John Lucimi, who's the Bologna centre half, Colombian international. There've been other defenders in France linked with us, but it's there's no smoke without fire, especially when the likes of Fabrizio Romano are reporting on stories. There tends to be a grain of truth to what what he's saying, certainly, and that gives me a lot of hope. We might not get Granit Xhaka, but we will get somebody. We might not get John Lusumi, but we will probably spend 25-30 million on the centre half, and that's something to cling on to. I think for Sunderland fans, if you're kind of looking at the squad and going, we need a couple of centre halves, we need a goalkeeper, I genuinely think we're going to get them. I don't think the strategy will change.
Yeah, and if the Xhaka deal doesn't happen, and don't jump on this and thinking it's dead. It definitely isn't. But I think it has become more difficult. But if the Xhaka deal doesn't happen, it won't be because Granit Xhaka's looked at Sunderland and thought there's not a cat and hell's chance I'm going there. Granit Xhaka wants to come to Sunderland. Now that in itself is a statement, isn't it? You know what I mean? So Sunderland have persuaded Xhaka that what they're doing is something that's worth him buying into. If it falls down, it will be because the Leverkusen board accept that they can't throw their manager under the bus and sell everyone. Now, like you say, while Sunderland have signed an awful lot of players this summer and are going to sign a fair few more, it's not been scattergun. It's not been a case of, God on, we need 8 players in here, right? Get him, just throw our money at him, whatever. You know, there's been method to every signing that's come in. You can see what Sunderland are trying to do. You can see what they're trying to do in terms of putting a club together for next season. I know we don't really want to go here, but if it all was to go wrong, they're putting a squad in place that will have massive resale value that is not going to jeopardise the future of this football club, no matter what happens next season, because we've seen clubs in the past that have thrown similar amounts of money to what Sunderland are spending on 32-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 29-year-olds, 33-year-olds. And so, you know, if it has gone wrong, they've left themselves in a terrible situation to have to sift through the wreckage. Well, you know, clearly we all fervently hope that doesn't happen. If it does, Sunderland were very clear right from the outset that this is about the long-term development of the football club. And yes, clearly the aim and the ambition is you hit the ground running and you build every season in the Premier League and you go from there. If there are blips along the way that Sunderland have conducted their transfer business this summer means the club can still rebuild and move forward and continue to progress in the long term, no matter what happens next season.
Yeah, well, if you think about 7-8 years ago when we went down first time, we obviously went down into the Championship with the likes of Oviedo and all the other players that we'd signed that we had absolutely no resale value on. Nobody really wanted. We had to kind of keep paying, and it kind of destroyed the club, and I think was partly the reason why we ended up going down again. So it's completely chalk and cheese this time around, I think.
Yeah, when we did a pod the other day, Bomber said about Xhaka that he felt it would be, if the fee is sort of 15 million, let's call it, for Xhaka, he said he felt it would be 15 million worth well spent. And I agreed with that. You know, I kind of think whilst you're right, the club are building a squad which has resale value. And like you say, worst thing happens, we can sell some players, we'll be okay. Do you think there's still room, though, to make a couple of Xhaka-like gambles where with somebody like him, 3 years, 15 million quid, it's a lot of money, but if that works out, you're going to make your money back in spades from having a player like that in your squad.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think that was what kind of Speakman was alluding to all the way through the summer, that, you know, yes, the broad principle of what we're trying to do won't change. We know we know what's worked for us. We know what will keep this club moving forward. But there's got to be a bit of flexibility in that. And the Xhaka deal clearly falls into that category that, yes, okay, you know, you're not going to sell him on for a profit at the end of his deal. But Sunderland are weighing up the fact that actually what he can offer you next season, potentially over 3 seasons, is more than worth it. And I you know, like you, I would agree with that. I think that, you know, what you cannot do is sign 8 Granit Xhakas, because you know that then leaves you in a world of trouble if things don't work out. But you can have 1 or 2 of them. You know, Ronaldo on a free transfer. Free transfers are funny because fans think, well, that's cost you nothing. Actually, his wages are really quite significant. He's moving from Atletico Madrid. He's not been on a couple of grand a week. You know what I mean? So that is a pretty significant investment Sunderland are making there. But again, like Xhaka, they've made the judgment call that actually that's worth it because he offers you more in that position than signing a 22-year-old who's got question marks hanging over him about what he'll give you, Will. So, you know, it's about balance, but there's always going to be room for an odd signing like that.
Yeah. Because those signings can be the difference between you staying up or not, which can be the difference between tens, potentially hundreds of millions of pounds anyway. So yeah, they're quite shrewd investments if you can get them over. And let's not forget, you know, if you look at the Ballon d'Or standings, Granit Xhaka is the 16th best player in the world. So 15 million euros or pounds or whatever for the 16th best player in the world is a steal in my books.
And you know what as well, though? Again, let's say a worst case scenario, you go down. Somebody's still going to pay money for Granit Xhaka in a year's time, aren't they? You know what I mean? So it's not like, you know, it's not like you're writing off 15 million quid. You would get some money back on that investment.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think it's posturing, to be honest. I just think they want more than we're offering. We want to pay a little bit less. And that's why I asked about that before, you know, with the transfers playing out publicly, because I think that's all it is. It's politics. It's posturing. if we really want them, we'll pay the money. And it might be a little bit less than what they want, but we'll pay it, and I'm sure they'll take it. And I think Ten Hag in particular is just being clever. You know, they're doing basically what Sunderland did with Job and saying, you know, we don't have to sell him. We aren't desperate. We've sold a load of players already. We don't need to sell Granit Xhaka. So if you want him, pay what we want. Otherwise, you can't have him. And I totally get it. I know people, Sunderland fans in particular, be looking at it and going, God, just give us him. But you understand it, don't you? As a selling club, you've got to be able to maximise whatever you feel your assets are worth.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've kind of seen that with various negotiations at different points in the summer, haven't we? So it's going to be you know, of all the deals that Sunderland have kind of moved for this summer, that's the one that you kind of watching to think, I really wonder how that's going to turn out. It feels the most uncertain, I think, because a lot of the kind of younger lads that they've gone for, it's kind of felt, well, they'll know the deal's there to be done. You know, the deal will get over the line with them. Xhaka feels more like there's an awful lot of moving parts in that, but it'll be interesting to see how it does play out.
Yeah. What's your gut feeling on the other positions? And because we obviously saw that deal for Loriente break down, so we know we're in for a left winger, goalkeeper. That's went quiet.
Yeah.
Talked
so
briefly about centre half before.
I think the two that they will definitely do are a forward. Now, that could mean a striker. I think it probably means more of a Loriente type who will play out wide but could play through the middle if you needed them to. Yeah. Mundo's injury, I think, has obviously kind of accentuated the need for that probably before the start of the season. So there'll definitely be a forward. Like I say, I suspect a Loriente type who probably ideally would play out wide but could play through the middle if you were really stuck. There'll be a defender. It feels like there's got to be another centre half, doesn't it, with the injury situation?
Two maybe. You know.
Two maybe. Yeah, I mean, you know, left back feels really tight at the minute, but obviously that situation changes if/when you get Sirkin and Olacy back. Then all of a sudden with Ronaldo as well, you've got numbers there. I think an out centre half, and then maybe a kind of versatile defender who could slot in a number of different defensive positions if you needed them. Maybe a loan for that one. Mm-hmm. And then keeper's the interesting one, isn't it? Because at various points in the summer, it's felt like keeper's been a real priority for them, and yet at other times, like you say, it's really gone quiet. And I think they'll sign a keeper. The interesting thing will be, is it going to be a Marcin Bulka type who you know, is a Poland international and clearly would have been coming in with very strong feelings that he's going to be the number one? Or is it going to be a Sam Johnston type who will be a rival for Patterson rather than an obvious replacement for him? I think that's the decision Sunderland need to make. And I suspect part of that will come down to how much money they're having to spend on other areas of the pitch. How much higher do they have to go to sign Xhaka if they get into a bit of a bidding war? How much do they have to spend on this forward player now that Loriente is off the table? That might well dictate what type of keeper they want, because I get the impression that you know, in an ideal world, Sunderland would sign an upgrade for Anthony Patterson this summer, but I don't think it's a case of Lebris saying, I'm not prepared to go into the season with Anthony Patterson. I must have a replacement for him. I think that's one that will probably be dictated to by what happens elsewhere on the pitch. But I think there will have to be a keeper of some description.
Yeah, especially with Matty Young joining Salford. That was confirmed Thursday morning. Bombays went there for the season. So, you know, obviously he's very young. We weren't expecting him to play or you know, even be involved this season. But still, the fact we've let a keeper go tells you we probably are looking at bringing somebody in, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Especially when, you know, we're gonna need three keepers. For all intents and purposes, we're going to need three keepers. Now, Simon Moore has obviously gone with the squad. How much he'll play, I think we're bringing someone in for him to very much be third choice. And I think he kind of knows that if you look at some of the social media stuff that he's put in. And there wasn't a point where Matty Young could have been that and Simon Moore could have been the second. But I think that makes the keeping aspect of our squad a little bit light in terms of absolute guaranteed quality. Now, Matty Young's going to be a quality keeper, but he's not a Premier League keeper at the moment.
No.
So that was the right decision. But that just makes me echo what Scott's thinking, and that there's 100% going to be a keeper coming in. It's just at what level.
Yeah. Well, Scott, I reckon by the time we next catch up before the transfer window ends, I reckon we might have another 4 or 5, and we'll be able to reflect back on this conversation.
Almost certainly, yeah.
We called it right. We called it right. But really appreciate it, mate. Thank you for joining us. It's been fantastic.
Oh, anytime. Enjoyed it.
Yeah. And cheers, Bomber. Always great, mate.
Thanks, guys. We'll probably see you tomorrow.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you to the listeners. We will be back with another pod tomorrow. And Bomber's right, because we're probably going to do a Hearts preview together. So you will hear our lovely voices ahead of the Hearts game. There's plenty coming up over the weekend. With on Monday, we've got the On This Week pod reaction to the game at the weekend. Pods every single day coming out of our ears at Howie the Podcast. So make sure you get subscribed if you're not already, and catch us on social media at Rotor Report, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You know where everything else is. We're everywhere. And also at rotorreport.sbnation.com for your stuff every single day from Sunderland fans just like you, chatting shite about the lads. So I've just leave it to say thank you very much, everyone. We'll catch you tomorrow, and we'll see you then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.